Oh, gal, this is truly your year to shine. Oh, hi. Um, Welcome to my review for Justice League. Before I begin to talk about it, I think we can all agree that the DCEU has had its ups and downs. When they jump-started their extended universe with Man of Steel, people were split on it. Some loved the changes to the character of Superman, but some DC purists were left disappointed and frustrated. And I certainly had my issues with how Superman was portrayed and the overall tone of the movie. Then, Batman v Superman hit the big screen 3 years later, and it was thrashed heavily by critics. Suicide Squad got a similar treatment. These were both highly anticipated movies, but because they came out in 2016, they didn't quite stick the landing. No, actually, it had to do with the choices of one director, studio interference, and reshoots. Suicide Squad was the unfortunate victim of the latter two. But this year turned out to be quite a year for Warner Brothers because Wonder Woman was a huge box office and critical success. We finally had a female-led comic book movie that didn't suck. This gave me hope that maybe they knew how to handle their franchise now. So, was it all worth it to get to the Justice League at this point? I would say more or less. Firstly, the new characters are pretty good. Jason Momoa as Aquaman was portrayed as stubborn and self-reliant until an incident calls for him to put aside his pride and join the League. He was another hero who was having way too much fun in action. The way he was jumping around going, "Woohoo!" Or when Cyborg catches him and he goes, "My man!" As for Cyborg, he was way more serious than his most notable portrayal, but to be honest, I didn't mind it. How would you feel if you were brought back from the dead as a half-man, half-machine? However, my favorite was Ezra Miller as the Flash. By God, he brought energy and a lot of levity that I wish I could get more in these movies. I love how wide-eyed and excited he was when he joins the League, and his interactions with the others was all around enjoyable. As for the returning heroes, Ben Affleck once again does really well as Batman, though he's a bit different from Batman v Superman being changed by Superman's sacrifice, even if it wasn't done very well. He has some humorous lines, particularly centering around his team members' weapons. Gal Gadot continues to kick butt as Wonder Woman. She still retained the traits from Batman v Superman and her own movie that I admire, from her determination to her compassion. And lastly, I think it's no big spoiler that Superman returns in this movie. I mean, we all saw it coming, especially since Henry Cavill was signed on to do it. But I'll admit, the way they brought him back was quite unexpected, surprisingly. Still, how was his performance compared to his last two? It was definitely a lot better here. He was truly close to being the Superman that everybody knows and loves, which makes me very optimistic for his next appearances in the DCEU. Now, the studio has used CGI to remove something from Henry Cavill's face, and it might be a bit distracting for a lot of people, but it wasn't for me. My advice would be to not think too hard on it, and just focus on the performance. So yeah, while the characters are good, the movie that they're in is pretty rushed and very choppy. I mean, I guess some people complained about the running time for some of the other movies, so Warner Bros. Made the demand to keep this movie at 2 hours. I think I could have sat through another half hour. I know Wonder Woman was long and slow at times, but it benefited for the development of Diana. I may have struggled staying awake during the middle of Blade Runner 2049, but the last hour got my attention again when Harrison Ford came in. I got a strong feeling that we're going to get another extended edition for Justice League when it comes out on Blu-ray. While the Ultimate Cut for Batman v Superman didn't do much for me, I am very open-minded to an extended cut for this movie. Especially since there's a source saying that a Snyder director's cut is being put together. Another problem is the villain, Steppenwolf. He was just another generic and unmemorable antagonist. Nope, that's all I gotta say about him. He was that forgettable. I really don't know what else to say about him. He was just bland, forgettable. That sums him up. So, in summation, I certainly like this movie a lot more than the other ones, but it contains some of the same problems, mainly pacing. But this year shows me that the DCEU is making the move towards improvement. Wonder Woman may not have been perfect, but it hit a lot of the right notes with its protagonist and story arc. And in this one, we got a lighthearted and surprisingly more colorful product compared to Snyder's other movies. The future for the DCEU seems pretty vague, but I really hope the critical reception and the poor box office performance won't affect it too much since some good has come out of it. I can only hope that the Warner Brothers Studios would give a lot more leeway to its directors. It may not be on par with the Avengers, but I think it's pretty serviceable with good characters and levity that works. Justice League gets my modest approval. Now, if y'all excuse me, I'm gonna get rid of this thing the right way. Y'all take care.